Are you ready? Okay, everybody, let's get this show rolling. We have a significant agenda, so I'd just like to remind everyone, if you do wish to have a conversation outside of the one we're having up here, please step outside and chit-chat so we don't get distracted. Welcome, everyone. It is the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting, and it is the 13th of May. John, would you care to read the quote?
Sure. Hope doesn't come from calculating whether the good news is winning out over the bad. It's simply a choice to take action. Anna Lappy.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. See nobody rushing up to the podium. Let's move along to the administrator's report.
Beyond the agenda, just want to let you know we've done most of the sweeping in terms of town office, down the beach parking lot, sidewalks, the beach. Big thanks to Dana and Nick Barry for that. The striping or restriping of crosswalks is complete, I believe. You may recall we had a request from citizens to put additional signage on the crosswalks at Route 1. Reached out to DOT and they finally got back to me with a partnership arrangement where they'll supply the signage and we'll supply the labor to install them. So that should be happening relatively soon. And the Money Athletic Foundation, which is more opportunities for neighborhood youth, will be holding a 5K on Sunday, May 26th. They've completed their racing event license and turned that into us. That starts at the school and ends at the school. Sunday morning, May 6th. Outside of that, just agenda items.
Okay, any questions for David? Let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here at the town office unless announced otherwise. Recreation Commission is scheduled to meet today. No, a week from today, sorry. May 20th, 6 p.m. here at the town office. The Five-Town CSD will hold its budget meeting on Tuesday, May 21st, 7 p.m. at the Camden Hills Regional High School, Strom Auditorium. There'll be a special town meeting regarding the Lincolnville Central School budget on Wednesday, May 22nd, 6 p.m. at the Walsh Common, Lincolnville Central School. Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation Board of Directors meets Wednesday, May 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Camden Town Office. The town office will be closed in observance of Memorial Day on Monday, May 27th, and the Board of Selectmen meet next on Tuesday, May 28th, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Any questions for David? Are there any upcoming community events anyone would care to share? Nobody jumping up and down? Let's move along to the meeting minutes from April 22nd.
I move the board approve the April 22nd, 2019 meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we have meeting minutes from May 2nd.
Go ahead.
I move that the board approve the May 2nd, 2019 meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded with one tiny adjustment of changing the date to May 2nd, not May 22nd. Here.
What's a couple weeks?
Did anyone want to care to amend?
Yeah. Amend that.
Amended, and is that a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we have Mr. Rosendal Gary here. Rosendal. I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Sorry. Mr. Former Selectman Gary, would you care to share?
Yes. What would you like to hear?
Tell us about
Everything's going great. Memorial Day. We are well organized, as far as I know, but we are missing a couple things. So the parade in Lincolnville this year will start at the school. They will step off at 1 o'clock. And that's a half hour earlier from previous years. And the reason being for that is that was a request from the school, Camden High School band. She has 50, 60 kids that are bored by then. They've been out since early that morning, and it's an extra half hour that she has to say, don't do this, don't do that. And so she said if we could do that. So therefore, we've moved it up a half hour, which will make it a little better. So that will step off at 1 o'clock. There will be a short program. Traffic, as soon as the parade is clear, the fire trucks go through, the street is opened. As soon as the fire trucks go through, the street is opened again, and hopefully people will drive really, really slow by so that you can hear. I could use 3 volunteers. I just haven't got on the horn and looked for them, but if somebody felt like they'd like to step up, I need a road guard out here at the school. I need one at 52 and 173 down by the store, and I need one down by Breezemere Park to stop traffic at 1 o'clock. So, and we have the vests for them to wear. Just need to pick them up. The worst case scenario, if it rains, we will be in the school in the Walsh Common at 1 o'clock. The Lincolnville band will be here. The Camden High School band will not, if it's raining. And the same way for those of you who are interested in Camden and Rockports, theirs will be at 11 o'clock in the school if it's raining. There won't be and
So-
the weather lately.
That's over the high school.
That's over the high school, yes, and it will be in the auditorium, not the gym.
Strong one.
Yes.
Okay.
Have I left out anything that you have questions for?
So you only have need for volunteers for the parade. What about before, getting things set up or anything like that? You good?
I'm pretty good with that. Pretty good
Great.
with that. I just need 3 people to stop traffic just for that. There's nothing any more annoying than when you're stretched out coming down the street with a full color guard and everybody has to move over so a car can go by. It's really annoying. And there are some people that just won't stop. They are on a mission, and they just are going to drive by the parade. So if we have, you never know whether we'll have a sheriff's patrol or a state trooper, or we put the request in, but you never know. One year we started the parade, and the sheriff's patrol and the state trooper took off. There was an accident, and so they were on call, and so they left. So we didn't have anybody here on that. So if they can be here, somebody will be here. I would like to see if there is someone interested in taking care of just around the flagpole, doing the flowers, and we like to usually put back mulch and stuff in there around the flowers and compost and stuff. If there is someone that would like to take that over, we have money for materials. You don't have to go, you just have to take care of it. But if you're going to take care of it, I need you to take care of it. So,
Wonderful.
I'm volunteering for that.
Any questions for Rosie? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. And we have Mr. Boach here to address the board.
Wentworth Road,
Thank you for having me. It was just about a year ago for three of you that you heard me here on this same topic, just about this time last year. What is going on is slow but sure because of the two subdivisions that are now up Wentworth Road that weren't there back along. There's more activity going on up there than what probably a lot of people would be used to if they were on a town road or a private road. Last year, what brought me here was when the town rotor-rooted, if you will, from the tar apron down on 52 and Wentworth Road, all the way up through the subdivision. And that's combining a town road maintenance project with a private road. That's what brought me here last year. I got back a sort of a little bit of an answer to the question last year, which was outright, where did the town road end and the private road begin? Mr. Late seemed to think that needed to go to executive session, so I wasn't privy to see how that discussion went. But I did get back a letter which more or less said that the town had maintained the road for 30 years, which isn't exactly correct, because 30 years ago there was no need for them to be going out back, as I was the only one up there. So yes, now that the subdivisions are up there, the town is maintaining more up that road than I feel they should. When I was here last year, I was sort of hinting to see if the board would find out where the town road ends and the private road begins, because I'm pretty sure that you're not supposed to be combining the two. Back in the day, long time ago, when I was the selectman, the Maine Municipal Association did not advise for towns to be maintaining private roads. Now, with more activity, more housing going in out back, there is more going on. Like I say, the rototilled all the way up through, and I thought that had more or less, we might have seen an end to it. However, it happened again. The rototiller went right on by the garage. So the point of the story is, town is maintaining a private road. I think it needs to be looked into. I would request, as a landowner up there, that the town does use the driveway for a turnaround, which has been the way it has been ever since I was there and when the Lacomas were there. That was Howard Bryan and Bob Richards as road commissioners. That's what the agreement was. They would raise the blade on their road grader at the mailbox and turn around and head out. Same with a snowplow. There was never a load of gravel ever dumped in the driveway. Now there's a lot going on that you folks need to know. I would have thought the road commissioner would have been a little more conservative on how he spends the taxpayers' money. Unless you have a question, I just want you to be informed that is going on. And as a landowner up there, I was never approached at all by anybody on any of this. As a matter of fact, Bernard has not been very helpful in regard to this. So unless you have some questions, I want you to be informed that there's town maintenance going into a private road. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
And do we have, Gary, are you gonna get up and chat with us about the communications we have?
Thanks, Lately. I'm Gary Galesian, Chair of the Lakes and Ponds Committee. And at your March 11th meeting, you issued a supplemental charge to the Lakes and Ponds Committee to develop educational materials on the issue of unencapsulated polystyrene. Since that time, the Lakes and Ponds Committee has been hard at work putting together a brochure and a cover letter for your signature. I think that was included in your package in preparation for this meeting, so we just wanted to check in with you to see if you had any edits or suggestions for the brochure or for the cover letter. I think we're pretty close to being able to put it into to printing, and we've been working with Dave Kinney and his staff to identify those property owners in town that own property on the lakes and ponds, and I think we've identified about 350 of them. The staff has put together labels for those as well, so once we get the go-ahead to get them printed up, we'd be able to send them out. I think in your supplemental charge, you asked us to try to get them together in time for Memorial Day weekend, so we've got a couple weeks left to be able to do that. But we just wanted to check in with you and see what you thought, see if you had any suggestions on how to go about it.
Well, great pamphlet, by the way. One thing that I would like to see changed, we have in the second paragraph, it says, "It is so persistent that it is difficult to recycle and takes decades or longer to break down." My understanding is it's, at least around here, there is no place to bring it to recycle. So maybe it's minor, but I'd like very difficult, almost impossible, something a little stronger than just difficult.
And maybe we could use the words dispose of too, difficult to dispose of. Well, I guess that's not the issue. So just
Disposing is
nearly impossible to recycle.
Yeah,
Something along
disposing
those
is
lines.
pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So.
Good. I had a question for you too on the cover letter itself. If you look at the first line of the cover letter, it says the purpose of this is to remind you about the issue. And I had talked to Dave Kinney about this some too, as to whether or not we wanted to make it a little bit stronger, and maybe substituting the word alert for remind. We wanted to sort of alert you to this issue. But I wanted to kind of get your sense as to how you wanted to do it. We didn't talk at all about an ordinance, and the question is how soft. We want to push it a little bit more in terms of concern about the issue.
I actually think alert would be a great change. Yeah, that's a good point, Gary. It's funny. I really generally liked the whole thing, but until when you just said that, it did hit me. Like, yeah, it's because a lot of people don't know in the first place, so it is really kind of alerting.
I think it gives the town more of a reason to be sending it out too, that there's a concern.
Yeah, no, I think I agree.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
Or inform, or
Okay.
yeah.
Or make you aware of a situation, something
along
something
those
of
lines.
that,
Okay.
nature.
And the other issue was whether or not we want to include something at the end if people want more information. And I had talked briefly to David about that. Perhaps the town office could be listed, and the town office could refer someone calling in to the Lake Association to the extent that there was a lake association for that particular lake or pond, or depending on the nature of the inquiry, a call could be directed, just so they have a place to go to get more information if they wanted to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps the CEO could be listed as a place to get additional information.
Well, I'm wondering too, David, is it possible to put like links to information on our website?
Sure is.
Just visit www.townoflincolnville.com or
Okay.
whatever, to / whatever page to get a directory, or call the town office, but.
Okay, so with your direction, I can talk to Dave and we can figure out some language to include.
I don't see why not.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's also the issue of color versus black and white for the brochure.
Pass that along.
And I think David printed up a color copy that is being passed around now. And
Oh,
looking
that's-
at it, I think the color copy might be a little bit more effective, because one of the things we're trying to get across are the blue specks that accumulate along the shore. That was from the Lincolnville River. And I think it just gives it a little bit more impact, and people can see the difference between the existing unencapsulated ones and encapsulated ones.
Yeah.
And the cost of doing the color reproduction, I think it's just a little under $200. At least that was a web price that we saw quoted for that.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Could I throw one other thing in?
Sure.
You know, not to be overly redundant, but a lot of times, I know in my house, you know, I got a bunch of kids and things get, you know, you get things in the mail, and a lot of times, the thing I'll read will be just like the cover letter or the first thing, and I mean, I would look at the pamphlet, but if all the information in the pamphlet, the one key piece of information that's not in the cover letter, and it is on the first page of the pamphlet, is just the cost being about the same as, you know, replacing it, an encapsulated one being about the same as unencapsulated. And I would love to add that to the cover letter, like maybe after the second paragraph, to say it's worth noting.
Like 3 bullet points.
Right.
Yeah, it's worth noting, and then just use the exact same language if you want to, you know, but just, it's worth noting encapsulated floats and docks are now about the same cost. Yeah.
Sounds like a great idea.
That way, if for whatever reason no one ever sees the pamphlet, or it's just this colorful thing floating around in your kitchen, you'll have at least
That point. which
that's
is
really
key.
helpful, I think, yeah.
good. And we've got a couple of other members from the
That's
Lakes
great
and Ponds
color.
Committee here that worked on it. Hope you've been taking notes. We'll cover it. Good.
Yeah, any other thoughts for Gary or the Lincoln Pond?
That's great.
Good
No,
job.
thank you very much.
Yeah,
This is-
great.
Would it be more effective if we change select board to your actual names and stole your signature stamp?
Yes.
Go for it.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your support.
No, thank you
Thank
all for
you.
your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's fantastic.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And we have Miss Amanda Austin here from 2A Architects to give us all kinds of information.
Yeah.
More than you ever wanted to know about the LIA building. Should I just sign in? I could just do that here. We're just trying to figure out the best way to show the documents to everyone. Do you mind if I ask you to help and I can get started, Dave? I can sign. If you just give me the internet, I can sign in.
We write water line on electrical panel.
I mean, it really, it's the best sentence I've read yet in any select word reading. Yeah. Reroute water line from kitchen electrical panel.
Yes.
Just tell it
Yeah.
like it is.
It just cuts right to the chase. Like, I'm trying to picture that in my mind. Like, oh.
Yeah, you don't want to see it.
Yeah, how did that even happen?
You don't want to see it. Oh, man. Technology at its finest right here.
It really is a good one. That one jumped right out at me.
Yeah.
It kind of has a cadence too. It's sort of musical.
I kind of had to read it a couple of times, like.
Right? I did too. That's what would come out. Like, how can that? Wait.
It's so definitive too.
So,
you know, it's
does
so.
that mean there's a water line coming out of the electrical panel?
There wasn't a lot of room back then. There wasn't a lot of room.
Back in my day, we had to run electrical and water together.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, aren't you supposed to run them up through the sewer pipe? Aren't you supposed to run them up through the sewer pipe? Save space.
The electrical line?
And the water line.
Oh, and the water line. Oh, yeah, the water line, right. Separate water and sewer pipe.
Da-da.
All right, looks like it's starting. All right, so tonight, the goal is to review with you what we've presented in the reports, albeit briefly. There's almost 100 pages there, so obviously we're not going to go into great detail, but the idea would be for us to just kind of evaluate those, and then we provided the summary for your review of how we might choose to prioritize the work, so we can talk about that. The next step being some cost estimating, so hopefully we can talk about that and hopefully get your approval to at least proceed with that. Seems like the next logical step. And then talk about your, just budget goals, schedule goals, anything that might help inform the pricing as we do it. So the documents just for the benefit of everyone else, the documents we presented were as-built drawings of the LIA building, and we're talking about the historic schoolhouse at 33 Beach Road. An architectural assessment, a structural assessment, a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing assessment. And then there was also a hazardous materials surveyor that came out to look at the building for lead and asbestos and any mold present in the building. The goal of all of this, and the directive from the select board, being to fully assess the condition of the building and what we might do to most responsibly preserve its presence there for the foreseeable future. So if we look, I'll just get started. What Dave's helping to pull up is some photos and the drawings. So if we need those, we'll have those for reference. If we want to start with the architectural, again, just briefly, I'll go through the highlights of each of these. The architectural assessment, you'll have seen the summary of the points. It's on page 12 in there, but we looked at the code assessment, building code assessment. We review against 2 different codes. The issues there weren't, I wouldn't say, severe, and while there are certainly code non-compliance issues, nothing there that is of too great a need. There are some easier things to take care of than others, things like putting in emergency lights, for example. And a couple of things we'd like to do some further work to look at with the help of a handyman, maybe taking down a couple of finishes in select locations. Another thing I'll come back to is the kitchen ranges. We should discuss that tonight. Then the ADA, while the building, most of the building anyway, was built before the ADA was created or gone into law, when you do renovation work, part of those renovation costs need to be devoted to making the building accessible. And so we've listed a few of those, the most prominent issue being that there really isn't an accessible means to get into the building. That's the first priority. And then in the building condition side, these are the reasons you all asked us to come out in the first place. So you're aware of most of those. The fact that the siding is deteriorating, the trim is pretty rough in a lot of locations. The existing fire escape has caused some issues, pretty severe issues with the siding in that area of the building. And then particularly the windows on the second floor in rough shape. They're the most historic windows as we saw in the building. We've also presented some photos if anyone is interested in those. Those are in the set of documents sent. The structural report, again, as long as the building maintains its existing use, there weren't a lot of issues there that, again, were of life safety type concern. But in any building like this, the building isn't obviously built to modern standards. The roof rafters are small, the floor joists are undersized as to what we would normally design them for a building of modern use. But the structural engineer said that basically, if it continues in its current use and the level of use, there are certainly improvements that could be made and probably should be made, but no fear as far as further deterioration or collapse. The mechanical and electrical report, there were some fairly succinct and easier things to take care of, moving a water line from in front of the electrical panel. Insulating pipes. Certainly the furnace is on its last leg from what we could see, what they could see. There are a couple signs that it's ready to go. In that building, it may not also be the best choice, just because of where the ductwork has to run. And then, we'll go through some more of those, but then the lead and asbestos, there certainly was lead in some of the paint, particularly on the exterior and some of the doors and windows throughout the building. On the mold side of things, in the basement, where it is just unconditioned space, meeting what is at least partially conditioned upstairs, there is some mold on the floor joists, so that can be remediated. So at a very high level, those are the types of things we found and addressed in a further assessment. So if we look at that summary document, there were a few steps that could be taken to even give a little bit more information, if you'd like. As the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, suggested, the chimney could be assessed to make sure it's lined properly, particularly if the furnace is going to continue to be used. Some very limited demolition could help, removing a little bit of finish in the entryway and on the ceiling to help us assess what's there and if it does meet the code compliance issues we raised. And then, or does resolve those. The crawl space access. In that building, it's nearly impossible to see anything in the crawl space to really assess it, and that means it can't be serviced either. So providing some way of getting into there would be advisable. We'd like to, we haven't yet, we could review, all right. We could review with Frank Terrio just to talk about, in particular, the amount of plumbing that he would like to see in that building and any other issues he would like to see taken care of. I'm just going to open up the photos here. It's a big file that's working on it. So as you all know what the building looks like, that's the south elevation, and you can see the ramp we're talking about there. Then the last thing we would do is just take a look through these results again and see if we need to adjust our priorities based on what feedback you give us. So unless you have any initial questions for me on the report or things you saw in there, I'm happy to answer those. But maybe we can just walk through the list of priorities that we presented. Okay. So we broke these down into two sets. After talking with Dave, we said, let's break this up into what essentially comes down to life safety issues, priorities as far as safety in the building. And then that brings along with it some access requirements. There were some clear life safety issues around the electrical, and then let's look at kind of securing the envelope of the building. And one thing I would say is that oftentimes in a building such as this, our first suggestion would be to take care of the foundation, to fully insulate it, to put down a vapor barrier, a thin concrete slab. In this case, that would take a lot of work and a lot of money. And to be honest, the reason we didn't put that as a first priority in this case is that we didn't feel the use of the building probably warranted it. If you were really going to use this building more intensively, if you had a large sum of money you wanted to invest in it, that might make more sense. If you were using the building all year and needed to heat it all year. So that was something we weighed quite a few times back and forth, but decided that that was actually probably in this case a little further down the list than we would normally put it. Again, if the building was going to be more fully used all year round, that priority might change. So it's a discussion we can have to see if we should adjust that. Most likely what that would mean, because of the crawl space condition now, is actually lifting or moving the building and doing that work. Because it really wouldn't make any sense to go to that extent without replacing the foundation. So we'll come back to that. But in the first set of priorities, we said, let's take care of the drainage, so that the water's not flowing into the building actively. We can redirect that. Let's provide a compliant means in and out of the building. So take care of that ramp, widen the doors, at least so visitors can get into that first floor space and get out of it safely if there ever was an emergency. And then on the second floor, the fire escape is really in rough shape. here.
I think you went by it, Amanda.
I think there's another,
Yep.
yeah, there you go. It's rusting, it's really quite unsteady. You can see what it's done just because of the detailing, the extent to which it's deteriorating the siding below it. You see some of the holes that are in the siding, probably also deteriorating the wall behind. So we would take care of that both from a safety standpoint and just to improve the condition of the building. Then we looked at the envelope repairs, the reason you all asked us here in the first place. It made sense to us to take care of those, to protect the structure of the building as it is. And right now, what we've said is, let's take care of the siding, the trim, the roof, which you can see in these previous photos is also, and these are from a couple of years ago, Dave provided these to us. We couldn't get on the roof. But you can see the condition of those shingles, half of which were installed quite a few years ago, and the other half was installed who knows how long ago, no one is really sure. But they're deteriorating pretty quickly at this point. Also, the bell tower, we could take care of all the flashing issues that surround that roof. And then the windows. So along with those decisions come a couple of others. What type of siding and what type of windows and the extent to which you'd want to replace or restore the windows. Our guess is, not knowing for sure, but guessing that possibly when the addition was added for the kitchen, the windows were replaced maybe throughout the first floor. They all seem to match pretty closely. They don't seem to be original windows. Upstairs they do seem to be the original historic windows. There's just a difference in the way the sashes appear and the amount of wear and tear. On the first floor they do open and close, but they're also single glazed. So again, talking about the life of the building and how much you want to put into it. And in this, even though some of the siding is still intact, if you really want to take care of the siding in the envelope, we would just take it off and start over with new material so that we could get proper vapor barriers and siding, and the whole wall system and flashing could be taken care of. And then there are a couple displaced foundation capstones that we would just, again, trying to make it as watertight as possible, put those back into place. And then there were a couple of the electrical things we talked about. There's an electrical panel above the toilet, not code compliant. Then the water line that is above the kitchen electrical panel, emergency lighting, carbon monoxide, a couple of those types of issues. Then we come to the furnace. If the furnace won't be immediately replaced, it's probably a good idea to look at least improving a couple things. The mechanical engineer noted the heat exchanger and the insulation inside of it those are the two signs that it's actually on its way out. So that's another case where we might adjust priorities. If we want to heat the building and put in a new heating system, we might move that up to this first step. And then the mold remediation, we could take care of that in the crawl space. Then we move on to what we've called level 2. So a few other code compliance upgrades, things like the fire separations that allow for the separation between the occupancies on the first floor and the second floor, and then around the stair to allow for safe egress. The structural repairs that were suggested, we could make improvements to the roof, the supports for the second floor rather, and then the original north foundation wall, so that in the basement, the wall that separates the mechanical space from the crawl space, that could be improved as well. If we're up to spending this amount of money, we're probably also talking about an accessible toilet room. The one that's there pretty obviously is not compliant. There's not even grab bars, there's no room to move in there. You can't get to the sink if you're in a chair. Then again, more electrical work, toilet exhaust fan, those sorts of things. Mechanical, if you would notice in here, they were talking about insulating and rodent proofing the ductwork in the unconditioned spaces. That again would be very difficult work, if not impossible, without removing the first floor. The plumbing, again, a couple of very specific and relatively minor repairs there. And then the asbestos removal, which again, in this case was quite minor. It was just on a piece of pipe under the toilet room sink. So that's kind of how we've prioritized things. Basic concept, take care of the shell, And then the second level, take care of some of the remaining things that were on the list that are not life safety, but are recommendations. So I think in making this decision, there's probably a few things to weigh. The extent to which we want to look at the siding and the trim and the windows so that we can at least price a package for you that makes sense and gets you at least what you are desiring out of the building. The furnace replacement, if that's something that's of interest. And then the one other thing I wanted to come back to was the commercial range hood. So typically, well, not typically, but I'd say in all of our experience, anytime there has been a range in a commercial building, whether it's residential style or it's commercial, it has to have a hood over it. Now, given this use, we spoke with the fire marshal. They said if there were a policy in place that you could boil water and heat food, they would be comfortable with that in this case, trusting on a town policy that that's the way the ranges would be used. So it's a bit unusual, but if the town's willing to make that, take that approach on the way the building's used, that would get around that. A commercial hood is easily between $10,000–$15,000, especially if you're talking about basically what the better part of a 7 or 8 foot wide hood. It often also means makeup air and some of this. You're all probably familiar with some of that, but
So they're referring to that like as long as you're not doing
Cooking.
what?
Yes,
As long as you're you're reheating, you're just
Yes.
heating up. Okay, so you're
So
not putting
the
together a
tipping
banquet
point-
or something.
Yeah, exactly. The tipping point is grease-laden vapors.
Ah.
So what he points out is that even technically, if, that's a funny example, but a grilled cheese has grease-laden vapors because it has butter and cheese on it, right? So it's not just that it's a large amount of cooking; it's anything that can release those kind of vapors. What a commercial hood has in it, of course, is a fire suppression system.
Ah.
That's the difference between
Right.
it and a typical range hood that's just going to exhaust air and smells.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect that you all should decide on at some point. The full crawl space and foundation repair, if you're comfortable with the approach we've taken. There is also the roof and wall insulation. You'll notice in this list of priorities, we didn't include insulation. It was something we felt could be done later if you wanted to make those improvements. But as a priority, if we're really just looking at priorities, that probably isn't one of them in just preserving the structure. Again, it's an unusual approach for us, but given this particular building, we moved that further down the list. And then there are always interior finish repairs you could make, although a building of this age, it seems like it's probably actually doing quite well. There's a couple of areas that have reasonably severe cracked plaster, but other than that, it's doing okay. The floors are actually in quite nice condition. And then the ADA repairs, there's always a little further you could go on that too in a building like this, but that's what we have. So you probably weren't surprised by a lot of this, but it does end up being a lengthy list when you really are looking at all these things. Like I said, we were hoping to get from you some agreement or shift of these priorities so that we could have them estimated for you and then come back to you at a future meeting with that price to present to you. And we would propose to do that in these 2 levels of priority, if that works for you.
Well, first I want to say thank you. I so appreciate the consideration you put in the way that you put this together. I mean, it's everything that I could have hoped for from this process.
Thank you.
Like you said, there's so much that we suspected, knew, etc. But it's just so nice to have it in this very clear and tangible form.
Good.
To get this conversation rolling.
And prioritized.
Yeah.
It's really super helpful.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, clearly because the space is utilized by a variety of different parties, I mean, doing the immediate necessary items, I think we're compelled to do that. So obviously, if assigning costs for that would be important. and just speaking for myself, you know, I think for any subsequent or greater scope of work, having a community conversation about what our goals and priorities for the building are.
Yeah.
You know, or do we want to expand the use? If, I guess, a question I have is, there are a lot of sort of like asterisks after, like, should the current use remain the same?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know if it's a possibility moving forward to say, if you increased use by X number of %, that would be the tipping point to trigger structural or accessibility, or that, you know, like, what's the point at which we would get ourselves into trouble
Yeah.
expanding usage either seasonally or occupancy wise?
Yeah. On the structural side of that question, that's more difficult to say. The ADA is entirely tied to the amount of money you spend on the building. So if you spend $100,000, you spend 20 on making ADA improvements. Essentially, the math is a little more complicated than that, but basically that's what happens. We could certainly, I think if we looked at what the structural engineers recommended, we could have another conversation about how much more would need to be implemented. It's not easy to say if it's used 10 times now, if it was used 15, we'd be over that threshold. It's really more of a judgment call than that. So,
Yeah.
but I can definitely talk to her about that and see if she has a sense of what she would want to see.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of an assumption here too, that when the building's used, maybe it's used for a short period of time, it's not used every day as intensively, every week as intensively. It's just, we have a sense of how the building's used, but we also don't have a lot of detail on it either, so.
Thoughts?
Two things that just concern me a little bit. If we go, you know, if the voters decide to keep the usage as is, and we move along and we take care of what it looks like, essentially, is what we're doing. There's, in the report, the roof trusses are really not what they should be, and the crawl space, you can't even crawl under it, and there is some infiltration there. There's a little bit of damage that you can kind of cover up or get back into place. So I'm very leery of that. And you showed pictures of the fire escape coming down the side, which, oh my God, that's got to change.
Yes.
It's life safety.
Yes.
But you can see where, over time, the elements have penetrated the outside clapboards. There's absolutely no question there's probably damage, to what extent, I don't know, to supporting walls and everything there. So obviously you're not going to see any of that until you start getting into this, but I don't want to say I've spent my life covering things up, but I've covered things up before that have come back to bite me really hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to do the right thing for the town, but obviously it's going to be the town that ultimately decides what they want to do with their building. So it really would be, I don't know, I'd really like to see something done with the foundation, really.
We really
myself.
wrestled with that too.
Yeah, I can see why you would.
Yeah. I think it does come back to that question of how the building's used to a certain extent. And I do think that if the mechanical system wasn't down there, it would be a little less of a concern, but right now you can't even access the ductwork that's down there. So we would definitely, one of the first things we said was at least provide access to the crawl space so that we can more fully evaluate what the floor joists look like and the condition of the posts coming down. So one approach we could take is to include a ballpark estimate at least for replacing the foundation and insulating it.
So jacking up the building and, like you said, the whole
Yeah.
shebang. Yeah.
You're
I mean,
familiar
at
with
least
that,
we
right?
could-
I am, and I mean,
Yeah, but
that's
We're just getting over that.
yeah. We're still scarred by that. No, but it's, I mean, that's that's
But
not.
it raises a good point, you know, I mean, we definitely don't want to get ourselves into a situation where we're sort of like holding it in stasis and just basically pushing this off to a future select board or
Yeah.
future town meeting
Yeah,
to
that's a good point.
wrestle with.
Yeah.
Well, I guess ultimately, in my mind, and maybe somebody would go a different route, I wonder what the town really wants to do with it.
Right.
Um,
But until we have
Could
the
collect.
numbers,
oh, yeah, yeah,
we
Yeah, we have
can't,
to go with it,
yeah.
yeah.
Know that.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to throw together a educated guesstimate of what we're talking about right now? Just fix the envelope and leave it at that, basically with improvements to the existing foundation to stabilize it. And add, what would it cost if we put another foundation on it, put a real foundation underneath it, lifted it up, put it back together, get those two figures and let the town decide.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, take it to town meeting, an open meeting, and say, this are your two options. This one will last X number of years longer. This one will outlast all of us, but we're gonna dump something in our kid's lap.
mhm.
Which way do we wanna go? And let them tell us which way to do it.
Mhm.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah.
dump everything back on the town, but it's their pockets.
Well, that's the truth of it. You know, I mean, like I'd almost want like a good, better, best situation,
Yeah.
so that we can really have that conversation.
Sure.
Because if it was me and if I could make it work, I definitely would fix the foundation. But if it's a choice of either fix the foundation and let the rest of the building go to hell, or fix the rest of the building and deal with the foundation 20 years from now, well, guess which way it would happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
before any of that comes about, you gotta gain access.
That would be the best way.
You gotta gain access in order to look at it.
That would be the
And
best way,
At least give us some
yes.
information.
We could take
Yeah.
a guess at the footings will be this deep and the concrete wall will be this
Yeah, yeah.
thick. We could certainly do that, but yes, it would be best. If the town isn't in a mad rush, then yes, it'd be best to have someone out to look at that.
Good.
You can see we managed to, the mechanical consultant, structural consultant managed to get a camera in there and turn it around,
Yeah.
take a few photos, but that was it.
Yeah.
That's as much as you can do right now.
Okay.
So is there a putting a number to just that, that first category, further assessment steps?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you need from us in order to, or, maybe this is a question for David too, like what, remind us where we are in terms of,
Budget,
yeah,
like what did we spend so far?
That's a good question. We still have some funds available to us. Not all that we were, we'd gotten proposals from these various consultants, but most of them were up to so much, and not all of them went up to that. I don't know how much more these other things will cost, the further assessment, and what you'll gain out of it in terms of information versus the costing, of the cost estimating really, which we've already contracted
Yes.
with Tom to do,
Yep.
Tom Albertson.
Crawl space access is the one probably someone would
Yeah.
need to provide us a price, because it's not as simple as cutting away the wall. Really, there should be a little more shoring put in there because the wall is already a little bit unstable. The limited demolition, there was probably someone in the town that could remove a piece of paneling, I would think, and a couple ceiling tiles, and a little ceiling plaster, those kind of minor things. It's the crawl space access that it seems might take a little work, so Dave and I could certainly work on that.
yeah, I guess it seems like we need to sort of figure out what we've got to work with. In my mind, it's not a question that we want to get the cost estimating done
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
those last final pieces known, but it seems like we kind of need to know what we have to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you get under there and go, these joists are all rotted out or something,
Yeah.
then it's a whole different.
Yes, it is.
So,
Yeah.
in the list of the people who are quote-unquote officers for the LIA building or LAI building, there is a maintenance representative, I think. His name escapes me, and I'm sorry, but would that person have knowledge of the structure of the building and how best to access I mean, it's my understanding he's been that person for a while, so he
I think
probably.
it's Andy, isn't it?
Is it Andy?
Yeah, we're not gonna ask him to
So is there a
call in.
possibility he would have information that would best serve us as to how to, yep, you can cut a hole right over there, something, you know, or maybe not.
Either that or somebody skinnier than I to crawl through what used to be the basement window.
Considering my current condition, I'm not gonna be able to do that.
I used to be that skinny.
Yeah, I did too.
Just a thought.
Well, Josh, at least you.
Yes, the young one prevails again.
I think probably working with either somebody from the LAA and or Amanda and or Carmen, we can
Yeah.
figure out a way,
Yeah.
an appropriate spot if we want to cut through the floor to.
I think that would be, if we could find a place to make an access point that we could use over and over again, would be, until we decide to do something, would be worthwhile.
Exactly. It serves more than one purpose, for sure, and I think that's why Carmen should be involved too, because if we can just provide an access the right way, at least we've done that much anyway. Yeah.
We're probably gonna have to spend a little bit of money to make it safe, make it accessible, but yet, and when I say safe, meaning cover it, so, you know, so nobody walks on it and gets hurt. But I'm good with that, cause I feel you need that.
And to that point, I think I'm actually thinking that we cut through the basement wall that is between the mechanical room and the crawl space. The other option would be to go through the floor. I actually hadn't even thought about that, but
Whatever best serves
yeah,
what we gotta do.
it could be a combination even. Yeah.
So do you need a motion from us, David, or?
I don't. I just need to make sure that Amanda knows what she's doing next, and then I can know what I'm
Amanda,
doing
you know
next.
what you're doing?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, can we afford to give her the nod to say, yes,
Oh, yeah.
let's go ahead with the next
We
step?
can make it
Okay.
happen.
So general nodding
good.
makes
That's
you,
good.
Yes.
That's good? Great.
What I hear is crawl space access. How much does that cost and what does it look like? And include in the estimate, actually, there's probably one more step of the crawl space access and these couple of things, but when we get to the estimate, go ahead and think about the full foundation and what it would cost to
Yeah.
do that, so, okay. In relation to the estimate, I wondered, is there a piece of that is not town budget, but it's LIA budget? Or it's all just should be included in one estimate for the town? Is that right? Okay. Okay. And then whether we answer it tonight or you consider it while we take this next step, the level to which you want to repair the windows, replace the windows, take care of the siding, the trim. What we've shown in here right now is just full replacement. It allows us the best opportunity to take care of the walls and the flashing in the windows. If you see a different approach or would like a more mid-range approach, we can go that route too, but at least that would give you a full scope of the price for a full replacement. And everything, the windows included, seem to be getting to an age where they're operating, but they're not in terrific shape, so. And that's a line item anyway, so it's easily extracted from the budget, but, okay.
Yeah.
We can take another step and then come back to that, but in the big picture of thinking about how you want to use and preserve the building, that's where that question comes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I answer anything else? Yeah. So I think I'll come back to you before I have the estimate done. Is that right? would you say, or should we just move ahead with,
We don't wanna see
Or-
you again.
or delaying the,
No,
not
I
one
mean,
more
I,
time? Or should we take these steps and just take a little longer to come back to you before
yeah,
we do? Okay.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that. So we had outlined a schedule in there, it will just get delayed a little bit, but you can see we had outlined, how long it might take us from your approval to get to construction on phase one. So that's there for your reference. Basically, it was the better part of 4 months by the time it gets drawn up, sent for bids and permitted.
So, okay,
All right,
excellent.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ploss, you had a question or a comment?
I just wanted to make a comment.
You gotta come to, gotta come to the podium. You don't wanna leave the folks at home out.
Yeah, you talk soft. Anyway, I'm president of the LIA. My name's Bob Ploss. Now, Brian Cronin is the vice president. Andy Andrews is the building chairman. All three of us have been together for a long, long time in office at the LIA. So we pretty much know that building from the bottom to the top and both sides. Well, one side was left to one side. But anyway, we would make ourselves available anytime there's an inspection that we could go with an engineer or whoever's going to do the inspecting. We would be glad to meet with them. We'll make ourselves available, and we probably might have some information that he doesn't have or she doesn't have. So that's not a problem. As I say, we've all been in office for decades, so we would be willing to help out. Now, I didn't catch everything that was said tonight because the lady has a soft voice and my ears are getting mature. So I'd appreciate if we could have minutes of the meeting or just from the building so that I could look them over and meet with the board. And I know it's an ongoing process, but we'd all like to, there might be something I missed here tonight that was said that might make some difference with the board. So if I could just have a written copy of those minutes, I'd appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I'm sure David could get you a copy of the report too to peruse.
As you know, we have spent probably a couple of $100,000 in that building over the years, one way or another. We have a huge investment in that building, but we want to do the right thing too. We don't want to be foolish about it. So it's important to us, as it is to the Historical Society, as it is to all of the folks that meet there. And we hold dozens and dozens of meetings there every year, including in the winter. So we have committees that meet there, we have families that meet there. United Healthcare recently came in and they had a seminar there, and we don't advertise it a lot, but it's a very busy building. So I'd appreciate it if we could all keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we have before us copies of the reports from Pinnacle Engineering. David, do you want to talk a little bit?
Sure, let me get those in front of me. I'm stalling in case anybody's running out the door too. The first, we'd had some ongoing discussions about the pier decking, and in order, including when we had the inspection report done back in May of 16, we had some recommendations about the deck, and there were some questions one way or the other as to how much the deck had actually deteriorated and what needed to be replaced and what didn't. Mr. Rule put together that nice color drawing that very clearly shows you piece by piece his recommendations for removal, the red, and replacement, which is about 14% of the overall decking. And then his yellow indicated was approaching, shall we say, replacement time, and his thought was basically it would be, if you're going to do the red, you might do the yellow at the same time. That takes it somewhere between 25 and 30% of the deck. I think it's pretty clear, even visually, if you go down and look at it, the wear pattern from where vehicles drive onto the deck, turn, and work their way out. So my thoughts on that were, would be to see if we could find one, send it to the Harbor Committee to say if we're going to do this work, or when we do this work, what time of year should this be done? We do have some funds available in terms of the harbor savings, so that we're not trying to do it on the 4th of July when everybody's trudging off across the deck. In all likelihood, this would be done, I won't say piece by piece, but in small sections or areas where you take out some in the morning and put in the replacement in the afternoon type of thing. So you didn't have, wide open sections of deck. But we are getting into the busier time of year in terms of foot traffic, vehicular traffic across the deck, both recreational boaters and commercial wise. So I guess with that, I won't jump into the boat launching ramp at the moment. Maybe we'll limit that discussion to the deck. But it's, Steve Rule, the fellow that did this report, there isn't, even if somebody went down there with a heavy overloaded vehicle and something actually broke, they're not going through to the water. I mean, there's so much wood and stringers underneath it, it might actually crack the deck, but it's not going to be catastrophic or life changing, besides maybe a quick for a moment. So I think we have a period of time within which to act, but I think we need to be preparing ourselves for the replacement of at least the red identified areas. The other thing that I don't know if Steve talked about in here, but that is going to give us a bit of an uneven surface. I'm not quite sure how that impacts the users of the deck. I mean, obviously we don't want to replace it and create a tripping hazard all the way across the deck either.
That was the question.
Yeah. And he did also suggest that we explore other mechanisms for snow removal.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, he says all of the damage appears to be from snow plowing. And then
Well, and that is just about the terminology
Almost
on
all,
that.
yeah.
And, if you take these plows, which the one that plows that off with regularity is one of those ones that goes out like that. It's a V, but also the ends move out. If you've got new cutting edges on that or some fairly recent cutting edges on that, that can do some serious damage.
Yeah.
But he also says there's plenty of plows out there that have rubber.
Well, they have a plastic or rubber trip edge.
Yeah.
It's not as effective. A snowblower would work really good on that.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
well, not to totally change the subject, but I don't know if it's something that, we could say have Farley look at and see if it's something that is part of our contract, if they have snowblower in a truck, an alternate means of removing snow from that
Yep.
deck.
The other thing that certainly contributed to the deck deterioration is putting winter sand on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to balance, it's not like everything else. You've got to balance between the public safety aspect, because you don't want something icy slippery, but you don't want something that's in essence creating sandpaper on the top, and then you drive a vehicle down and turn the wheel, it just,
Yeah.
it's just eating into the deck.
I mean, he does make a suggestion in here to replace,
Yep.
a continuous chunk. The nice thing is that I feel great about this work is that we now have a known quantity and a quantifiable amount of materials
Yeah.
to be able to actually figure out what we have to afford,
Mm-hmm.
which is such a great place to be.
It's hard to believe that if you add those two colors up, that's only about 30% of that deck.
That is, yeah.
That is hard to believe, and
Wow.
if you look at that, that's pretty much the whole middle of the deck, to me.
Just the whole middle of the deck, yeah.
And, you know something? I'd like to see an estimate to replace that right there, but I'd also like to be able to compare it to do the whole deck and start fresh, not have somebody say, I tripped, I got a broken leg because you only replaced partial. That's a long shot, but
Why would it make it uneven? Because the board, like new boards are thicker or something?
Well, you'd put down what was
Yeah.
originally there to begin with, and obviously some of
They're
it's
not worn out.
deteriorated, right. So even if you look at some that are still white in the drawing, you know, that is seen undoubtedly somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been there
but this
30
is
years,
good.
30 years.
This is something we haven't been able to
So if you take,
have.
yeah,
before.
so if you take something that's been there 30 years,
It's only 30.
and some of it's gone, and you put next to it what was originally there, you're
Yeah.
going to have
Yeah.
a difference. And we have a difference down there now. I mean, they're relatively smooth from one to another, but certainly some of them have deteriorated at a greater rate than others.
And I would be, like Karen was saying, I'd be real tempted to get a price at what it would cost to do the metal, and then just chamfer the edges of the boards going on both ways, so that there's not a blunt, you know, it's a slide up, but it isn't much, and that would keep
Mm.
stuff from catching on it more.
So
If
the
you're grinding off
majority
the
of it
wood,
would
but
be
you're not
from
grinding off that much.
Here,
Is this I'm sorry.
here.
Is this affected at all by that study that they're doing, you know, for
Yep.
waterfront?
Certainly the resiliency,
Yeah.
they're looking at, this is the pier they're looking at in Lincolnville. They're looking at, you know, how with any predicted sea level change, the structure will be impacted. I'm gonna venture a guess that, if we got 30 years out of this deck, we're gonna get 30 years out of the next deck. And I don't know what change is gonna occur water level wise in 30 years, but, they're also, the kickoff meeting for that is coming right up. Someone's gonna remind me when?
Friday from 10 to 2, I believe, in Rockland.
Yeah, this Friday. So they're looking to have that study wrapped up before year end. You know, so if somebody said, well, this is gonna be underwater, you know, 20% of the time in 3 years, we might want to rethink whether or not we want to put a deck on or raise it up and put a deck on, you
Well,
know.
that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
So that's another reason why we're gonna get input on the appropriate time of year, because chances are the
Right.
appropriate time of year is going to be after that other study's complete,
Right.
would be my guess. It also gives us a little bit of time to figure out exactly what area we're looking and how to put this out to bid for pricing.
Well, I certainly would be interested in hearing what the Harbor Committee has to say. So, would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that the board forward the report of the pier deck inspection for Lincolnville Fish Pier 2019 to the Harbor Committee for the written recommendation by no later than June 17th, 2019 on the most appropriate time of year for any pier deck replacement work.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Do we want to add to that? See if they, in their opinion, this would be sufficient, or do they, and see if they think and have a reason for replacing more of it? Or do we want, or is this adequate?
I think we're gonna get it anyway.
I feel like it covers it.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Thank you very much.
The second half of what the board hired Pinnacle Hill Engineering to do was to look at Ways to improve the usability of the launching ramp. Launching ramp currently was identified in the Collins report and has been periodically identified by users to us as not ideal due to its pitch or grade. Basically follows that of the beach, so it's relatively flat, which makes it challenging to launch. The Collins report had recommended steepening it somehow. What Pinnacle Hill put together were a couple different options, primarily the ramp itself being the same ramp in all the options, but the shoreside facilities being altered somewhat. They're looking to start, in an ideal world, you'd start in deep water, which we don't have anywhere there, but you'd at least start at mean lower water, I don't know. Yeah, mean lower, low water. Yeah, two L's in there. And then work back up at a certain grade till you got relatively level with the road, being McKay Road or Route 173, and then going flat back to the road. So that puts a fair amount of fill in the beach, but it's to get the right pitch so you can actually launch and retrieve a boat without having to have a trailer that comes off your truck and lowers out there. It certainly has some visual impact. It would certainly change that corner there in terms of looks. Certainly would make the pier more usable, the ramp more usable for people hauling boats. And then would have some exposure challenges in terms of the beach is at the slope of the beach for a reason, because that's what Mother Nature kind of wanted, although that shifts a little bit. And if you build something up on top of that, it's going to change a little of the wave action or exposure. Same thing as if you tried to put something, dig it deeper, it's going to try to fill into that natural beach level. So it's just something, it's certainly, there's no hurdle that's insurmountable. I mean, the state has proved with the ferry ramp that you can build the road out there so you can armor or protect whatever you need to do. It adds time and expense, obviously. We did not contract for, nor do I think Pinnacle Hill would necessarily, well, they might do it, but we didn't ask them for a cost estimate. We probably have something here now that would be sufficient at least to get a budget cost estimate. It isn't something you could go out to bid with, but you could take it to a qualified contractor or several and say, if we were looking at something like this, knowing we'd have to go out to bid, what type of budgetary numbers were we talking? The other part that varies is the shoreside support parking, in essence. His options do so show some that is contained within our current town-owned property, which is probably a good starting point for a couple of reasons. One is permitting. The ability to permit a launching ramp is relatively straightforward, particularly if you're improving one you have in the shoreline area. Once you start building parking, that's not necessarily marine related, even if you're hauling boat trailers, where you're going to be able to fill beach area to create parking. So the options also looked at extending over where the current Lincolnville Beach sanitary facility treatment plant is. At some point, the plan for the sewer district is that they're going to remove that, and then that will be land that they may be willing to have conversations with us about, but we don't own it currently, nor do we intend to.
Does the sewer, the new beach system on it yet?
No, my understanding is that they've put off bid opening until later this summer now, and they're looking to start with fall construction or after Labor Day construction. I understand that the district trustees met with the Lincolnville Beach sanitary facility representatives in an executive session a week or two ago. I haven't seen or heard whether or not they've come to a conclusion with those folks, but I'm sure each time they meet, they get a little bit closer.
But this is something that we could say, if we agreed to it, ask you to go and open a dialogue with them about
Yeah, I'd certainly
possibilities.
share the information we have with those folks if that was something that was a priority for the board to say, hey, when and if you acquire this and you're done using it, we have these things that, you know, might work to all of our advantage.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts.
Well, I'm really excited about this idea of a boat ramp that the public can actually use it more than 25% of the time, and I think that conceptual plan A makes the most sense. So yeah, I think we should go forward with bringing this to the harbor committee and going from there.
I would like to hear what the harbor committee feels about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which concept I'm in favor of at this point. I need a little bit more time to continue looking this over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pictures type of guy. There's a lot of pictures here, which is good. I'm not sure which one I'm in favor of yet.
I mean, in a perfect world, I'm definitely in favor of a concept that includes trailer parking, because that is something I've heard from many residents and personally have experienced the frustration of launching a boat, having to drive home, leave the trailer, come back, hope there's parking, park, use the boat for enough time to get back before the tide changes,
Yeah.
drive home, go get the trailer, come back and hope I can pull the boat out before the tide's changed enough.
So like
So-
conceptual plan B or C?
But the challenge there is that those concepts include a certain level of agreement and use of land that is not ours. So if we were to move forward with initializing permitting, I mean, I don't know that we couldn't make that a reality further along, you know, so the concept A certainly gets us
At least to a ramp.
to that point, and then should we be able to work out some sort of a arrangement with that adjacent piece of property, you know, I'm sure we could cross that bridge when we came to it, but I'm just going to, for the record, put it out there that some trailer parking would be
Definitely.
amazing if we're
Yeah.
going to look into this, but, you know, a functional boat ramp is amazing. That would be amazing, but yes, I too would like to hear what the harbor committee's thoughts are. But now that we have all of these drawings, we're in a really good position to move forward with looking at funding
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah,
So-
this takes the squares or the aerial photos that Collins had done and just delineated
Yeah.
to the next level. It's certainly not all the way to where you need to be. And I would reemphasize what Chair Dunn said is this doesn't all have to be all or nothing at once. It could be an incremental launching ramp, and then when and if something actually happens with property next door, you could expand upon that and add on. It isn't something you'd have to go back and undo what you did.
Right.
Well, again, there's that study You know, they come back and they go, well, your shoreline's gonna be up.
Right.
So
There's that.
building up riprap is actually a good idea.
Yeah, Bill, yeah.
So if the
That's
board,
true, yeah.
I mean, is there more thoughts or conversation or, I mean, I would love to have someone make a motion to, establish one of the concepts as our preferred alternative, perhaps with the amendment to go officially in our minutes with, you know, say if we chose to have Plan A as our preferred alternative with the thought in the future of different arrangements for parking, alternative parking plans. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear what the Harbor Committee has to say, and since we're already tasking them with looking at some other things, I don't see why we can't include this in their package.
Yep.
I move that the board establish conceptual plan A as our preferred alternative with the possibility of incorporating different elements of the other conceptual plans if possible in the future.
I'll second that.
That's
Perfect.
I'll second. Yep,
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion there? See nothing. All those in favor? And can I have a motion to task the Harbor Committee?
I move that the board forward the boat ramp study to the Harbor Committee and Harbor Master for their review and input.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I
Yes.
noted in Selectman Gerritson's one with the pier deck, you gave them a time frame. Did you want to add one to this one as well, or?
A time frame, same. Let's finish this motion. And
Okay.
we'll just,
Yep,
so
sorry.
is there any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Can I have a motion to set a timeline for return of input from the Harbor Committee and Harbor Master?
I move that we set a deadline of no later than July 31st, 2019 for the Harbor Committee to give their review and input to us regarding the boat ramp study.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Could I make a request to amend that back
Yep.
to June 17th to include it, since we're making them,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
get back to us about the pier decking, just thinking about grant
Yeah,
opportunities.
I'd like to amend that to June 17th, 2019.
Perfect.
And I'll amend my second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And is the board amenable to tasking the town administrator to start gathering numbers?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, can I have a motion, please, then?
Is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
I move that the town administrator be asked to obtain a budget cost estimate from a reputable contractor for the preferred alternative.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And is the board amenable to asking our town administrator to engage in concerned parties regarding the adjacent parcel?
I move to instruct the town administrator to open a dialogue with the Lincolnville Sewer District of their long-range plans regarding the use of the property that now houses the Lincolnville Beach Sanitary Facility wastewater treatment plant.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? And is the board amenable to moving along the grant monies conversation?
I move that the Harbor Committee as well as the town administrator explore that grant opportunities for boat ramp facilities that might be available.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we kind of glossed over it, and and so before we move along, I had kind of thrown out there getting David to have a conversation with Farley about different snow removal opportunities for the pier decking. Since we're tasking the harbor committee with putting their minds to this, it would make sense to task them with looking at it also.
So you need a motion.
I would love one,
Okay,
please.
I move that the board ask the Harbor Committee for their written recommendation, no later than July 31st, 2019, regarding any recommendation they may have for pier snow removal operations that will extend the life of the pier deck.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And is there anything else on this particular topic? Okay, let's move along. It is going to snow tomorrow, and so we should talk about winter salt bid awards.
No. Wait, you're driving people away.
So we collectively, with a number of other communities, do a cooperative road salt bid. And as much as we might think it's going to snow tomorrow, this is for the upcoming winter season. You had in your packet the 4 bidders that responded to the bid request. And we've done business with the parent low bidder, New England Salt Company, in the past successfully, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't take the low price here.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the road salt bid for fiscal year 2020 be awarded to New England Salt Company LLC at the delivered price of $47.07 per ton and the picked up price of $47 per ton, and that the town administrator is hereby authorized to enter into an agreement with New England Salt Company LLC under these terms.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we have a update from Northeast Mobile Health Services.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a fast-moving target, I guess is the best way to put it, and it's developing semi-quickly. What you have in your packet was the last offer we had received from Northeast Mobile Health, which was in essence a 5-year contract, that the first year would be at the same cost we're paying currently, and then it would have an escalator on an annual basis for the remaining 4 years of the contract. It also had a clause that would allow us to buy our way out at a certain point in the future. If we so chose. Some of our partnering communities have started an exploration of other alternatives. The 5-year contract would require, a 5-year contract is beyond the board's ability to sign without either a non-appropriation clause, which means if town meeting doesn't appropriate money, the contract basically is null and void, or a town meeting approval. So a 5-year contract could be approved by the vote of town meeting. Some of our partnering communities objected to a long-term contract, either with a non-appropriation clause or taking it to town meeting. So Northeast got word was the representative from Northeast we met with, the managers and administrators of the 4 towns met with last week on Thursday. Explained the situation we were all in, and he explained where they were. Their obviously concern is we brought them here on a bid basis. They've invested in purchasing a building and trying to set up operations in Rockport. They're concerned that the 4-town cooperative might dissolve, for lack of a better word, or might not be able to come to an agreement with them about continuing. So they wanted a chance to go back and talk to their owners about the status and get back to us. They thought it'd be back to us on Friday. They weren't back to us on Friday, with the exception of saying, need a little more time. Got an email today saying that it looked as though they would be forthcoming with another agreement that would only be 1 year in duration.
Cost unknown, though.
Cost unknown at this moment, so I'm not quite sure what to tell you. Our contract with them currently expires at the end of June.
So
They have said they are not gonna leave us hanging, but
So the contract in the packet is the
Most recent
is the
iteration.
most recent one, but
subject to change tomorrow, probably.
but not all the towns have agreed to sign that. Is that?
And we hadn't agreed to sign that, but at the time this was put together, it was the best.
So they're gonna get back to this as one. So okay, right.
This will be the third draft that.
This year.
Yeah, we actually had, we had a proposal that came forth from Northeast early in this calendar year. It was a 1 year contract at the same price we paid in the current year. We did not execute that contract. We actually had asked for a couple of minor modifications. A partnering community rolled out another concept to explore in the coming year, and that made Northeast nervous, a little cold feet, and in essence said, well, what we'd offer you before might no longer be valid. We might not be willing to sign that contract because circumstances have changed, and then came back with this 5 year contract, which some of our partner communities said, well, we're not ready to go that way either. So it's kind of,
So now they're going back for to the one again.
we're in limbo. Not all of our doing.
We have, I have made an effort to reach out to one of our partner towns. We tasked the town administrator, the board tasked the town administrator to reaching out to our partner towns to get the boards of selectmen together to talk about what our goals are. What are our goals as a partnership? What are our goals individually as communities? Do we have united goals? Two of the towns expressed a willingness to schedule a meeting. Camden thus far has been unwilling to schedule anything. I did reach out to the chair of the Camden Select Board last week and have heard nothing back.
They're just not even responding. Like
That's
they don't
correct.
even want to have a conversation.
Well, the initial response was they desired to wait till their town manager had returned from vacation to even schedule a meeting.
Oh,
But she's been back for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
great.
I believe the chair's out of town, isn't he?
He's usually pretty good about responding to emails.
So Northeast is saying they're not going to leave us hanging, but I mean, if Camden doesn't answer the phone, what happens then?
Well,
Have they given any indication as to what?
I'm cautiously optimistic without knowing what Northeast is going to come back at with us, to say that we're going to find some middle ground that buys us a period of time. And what happens in the long run, if there are none of the 4 communities, based on what I learned back when we went through the proposal process years ago, none of our 4 communities is large enough, really has enough demand to justify ambulance service. Collectively, we do.
Right.
And that's where we all benefit you know, road salt or ambulance or anything else is doing things together. There's enough critical mass. Critical may be a terrible word to use in the ambulance discussion, but, you know, there's enough volume. We had, Lincolnville had 14, I think it was 14 calls for service in April. You know, you can't well, you could, if you wanted to, operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with an ambulance service, but for 14 calls, that's one every other day. Not even every other day, you know. We don't have enough to demand an ambulance. Hope certainly has less calls than Lincolnville does. They don't. And really, if you look at the volume in Camden and in Rockport, individually, they don't either. Or they might have enough to justify one, but the calls don't come, they're not predictable. You know, you can't say there's going to be a call at 8 a.m., another one at 1, and another one at 6 at night. They for whatever reason, ambulance calls seem to come in bunches, you know, whether it be an accident or something like that. And so there's a reliance on either mutual aid or having more ambulances, more readiness. So that kind of goes back to what we were attempting to set up with the other communities is when we found ourselves in a crisis a number of years ago, where we were going from, well, the request was in round numbers to go from $50,000 a year from 4 towns contributing an ambulance to $490,000 a year. The towns got together and collectively outlined what our goals and objectives were at the time, and said, okay, we're all in the same boat. We've been using a service that did 3 towns and half a Hope at the time. And we were able to have conversations and discussions about what it was we were trying to provide and how best to provide it. We then sought proposals for that, chose Northeast, and we've had a couple different contracts since then with those folks. So that's kind of, you know, if everybody's going towards the same thing, it's kind of, I won't say it's easy to put together, but it's easier. If one of the 4 towns decides to go in another direction, then you only have 3. Well, who's the 3, and is that enough critical mass to keep what you have? Or do you have to bring in another community or go to join with somebody else? It's a challenging discussion.
So at this point, we are waiting to hear back.
I don't think we have any choice. I think I would encourage the board to continue to encourage our other partnering communities to have a dialogue, even if the current vendor said, "Oh, we'll give it to you for the next year for free." Obviously, others are exploring other alternatives or other service delivery mechanisms. It would be nice to know what your partners are doing, so that, because anybody else's actions, our actions or their actions, have impacts on the other communities.
Obviously, they're
Right.
You know, we're days away from our contract expiring without having
An agreement in place.
an agreement, and I mean, it would just be, it would be wonderful to get the people who make the decisions like this in the same room so that we can determine whether our goals are aligned or not aligned. To, you know, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, once overarching policy is established, then others, managers, administrators, other staff, can provide the board or boards with options of how to solve the problem and what the costs are associated with that. And once you know what you're trying to accomplish and you know the options to get you there and the cost, then you make a decision, and then you take that to town meeting to ratify, you know, the dollars associated with that. Without knowing what the challenges that you're trying to solve, it's hard to give you options and pricing. I guess.
Almost take it back. Are there challenges? Are there challenges? What are the challenges? Do we all face the same challenges? And then, can we fix them under the current system? If yes, then this, and if no, then this. I mean, but we can't even get to that place of the conversation. We're just waiting.
Because that requires answering the phone
Or an email.
or an email
Yeah.
or something, an answer. Right.
Yep.
All right.
What do you need from us at this point, David, other than?
Based on the fact of what's come through since the packet was put together and you received it, I'm not sure as we need a whole lot. I think when I receive something from the next round of this from Northeast and have a conversation with the managers and administrators of the other towns to see where they all stand, we might, I hate to say we might need to have some sort of special meeting, but we might,
Yep.
depending on what the results of that indicate, so that if we need to seek an amendment to at town meeting for funding or start knocking on doors with other alternatives, that would be the time. I'm hopeful that what comes through will buy us a short-term solution and maybe hopefully a long-term solution eventually, but
Well, at least give us an appropriate amount of time to have whatever conversations need
Yes.
to be had.
I'm concerned that June 30th is right around the door, right around the corner.
Yeah. Yep. Any other thoughts or comments on this? Okay. Let's move along to approve special town meeting warrant.
So the Lincolnville Central School Committee has put together their budget recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year, which will be the next school year. The special town meeting regarding that budget has been tentatively set for May 22nd at 6 p.m. in the Walsh Common at the school. I will note for anybody that's here or listening at home that the current proposal from the school committee requires $725.27 more from property taxes in the current year. Budget committee's made their recommendations. There are a couple of differences between their recommendations, and I think the most of that came from the school committee making some minor adjustments a couple days after the budget committee made their recommendations.
Okay.
I was curious about that.
Yeah, there wasn't.
They had to subtract a few numbers there.
Yeah, it wasn't the fact that the school committee had recommended one number and then the budget committee recommended something lower.
Less than that.
Just
It
an
was-
off step.
Yeah, it was that the budget committee was acting on the best draft that they had at the time they made their recommendations, and then the school committee tweaked it.
Can I have a motion, please? Unless there are further questions.
Move that the board approve and sign the special town meeting warrant for May 22nd, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing. All those in favor? And we need to approve the annual town meeting warrant for the 11th and 13th of this year.
Yeah, so you have your annual town meeting warrant for the municipal, well, first for elections, it'll occur on Tuesday, June 11th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the gymnasium of the Lincolnville Central School, where the townspeople will be electing a selectman, 2 school committee members, 1 5-town CSD board member, and 6 budget committee members. 2 other questions on the ballot on Tuesday. One is, do you want to approve the Lincolnville Central School budget? Gets set on May 22nd, gets validated by the voters on the 11th of June. And then the other question is, do you want to continue with that validation referendum process for the next 3 years? Articles 5 through 30 something, 5 through 30, are the municipal budget and all the articles from snowmobile club funding to alewives to tax, interest rates, all that stuff. Interest will be determined on Thursday, June 13th at 6 p.m. I will note for anybody listening or here in attendance that the Selectmen's budget seeks $23,196 less from property taxes for the coming year than the current year.
Nice job, everybody.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
And also
And
that the budget,
Oh, and the Budget Committee recommended the same amounts as the Board of Selectmen.
good work. Can I have a motion, please?
Move that the board approve and sign the annual town meeting warrant for June 11th, 13th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor?
For the benefit of the folks at home or listening or here, the warrants will soon be posted on our website, and if you want a copy, they'll be available here at the town office. Also be available at town meeting, and the town report will have the annual town meeting warrant within it. That'll be out a couple days before town meeting. Right, lady?
Yes, it will be. I promise.
I'll hold you to it.
Okay, let's move along. We have, well, do you wanna blather, or do you want me to?
Me? On the next one?
Yeah,
I'll talk. I love to talk.
talk.
So the town has acquired at least a partial interest via non-payment of property taxes in 2 parcels of land. Neither one has a building. One is located on map 34, lot 218, which is on Green Acre Road. And the other is identified as map 6, lot 62 on the Scoper Road. I'd like to get the board approval to commence with the quiet title action so we can confirm our ownership interest in those, and then we can have a discussion about how the town wishes to dispose of or maintain ownership of.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move that pursuant to the town's municipal lien acquired property ordinance, Article 3, Paragraph D, that the board authorize the town attorney take any and all actions necessary, including filing quiet title actions for the properties identified on map 34 as lot 218 and on map 6 as lot 62.
second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And for the November election, the board appointed additional ballot clerks to assist in staffing the polls. State rules and regulations, such appointments can only take place for the particular election that they're appointed for. So given that we have more elections coming up, we need to appoint more clerks.
I move that the board appoint Rebecca Richards, Hannah Burke, and Jean Botley as election ballot clerks for the annual town meeting, which commences on June 11th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all. And before we can act on our next item, we need to have a motion to suspend ourselves as Board of Selectmen.
I move that we suspend our meeting as the Board of Selectmen and that we convene as the Board of Assessors.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much. David?
The assessor's agent prepared the ratio declaration and reimbursement application, which is paperwork that must be submitted to Maine Revenue Services to tell them how many homestead exemptions we think we'll have for the coming years, because they reimburse us partially for homestead exemptions, and to also tell them our ratio of sales to assessed value. We are dropping below the 90% threshold, or we have, so we'll be looking to have the assessor's agent meet with the Board of Assessors in July to discuss maybe making some changes based on market conditions. But the first thing is to approve the ratio declaration and reimbursement application, because that has to be in by June 1.
I move that the board approve and sign the ratio declaration and reimbursement application as prepared and recommended by the assessor's agent.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. So
And
how's the
then
middle of July?
Yeah, everybody's favorite, to try to set up a workshop in July. The assessor's agent would like to meet with the Board of Assessors to discuss any changes that might be necessary to assess values to better reflect market value, so that we can maintain our ratio and give everybody a real homestead exemption instead of something different.
So the real question is an off Monday okay with everybody? And if so, what time can everyone convene? It shouldn't take too terribly long.
Famous last words. I can see this.
God.
Well,
I go back
Let's
to
hit-
due municipal speed.
well,
Let's set the hook first.
Terrible.
Come
yeah,
on.
set the hook. All right.
God.
Well, it may take, Vern's concern was that he didn't want, it was likely that adjustments were going to need to be made this year, and he didn't want to try to come in with a 20-item agenda and rush through, because there's potentially a fair amount of math
Right.
that, so he'd meet any night you want to do it, but I suggested a off Monday.
Just so I'm clear on the whole issues, is it we're selling generally below market. Houses are selling for what they're less than what they're assessed for.
No more.
And they're selling for more than what they're assessed for.
Yes.
And so
And what
now
happens?
we want to.
Yeah, when your ratio, I'm not a good assessor. I'm not an assessor at all. There are two ratios that they figure out. One is just a straight assessed value versus sales value.
Right.
So we're constantly tracking sales, and when your assessed value drops below 90% of the sale value,
Right.
on
okay.
average, each sale is different.
Yeah.
But when you combine them together, then it starts to impact your ability to get full reimbursement for homestead exemptions.
Got it.
So instead of being able to give somebody a $20,000 homestead exemption, you have to give them $18,000 or $15,000, and then people start saying, well, why does my friend in Camden get $20,000 and I only get $15,000 for my homestead?
And currently we're at 89%.
Yeah. And the other is a quality ratio, which I'm not even going to attempt to explain. That's what Vern would do for you. But in essence, you take what's going on with sales, you try to determine if there are certain neighborhoods or certain home constructions or something that is driving the ratios to get apart, and then make adjustments
So,
so
you're back
so you get back in
95.
back to about 100, hopefully 100%, give or
Right.
take. And, you want to get it so it's fair and equitable, so that everybody's paying their fair share. No matter how much you may dislike paying property taxes, that's the system we have, and it ought to be applied equally amongst properties.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Yeah.
Vern could explain it much better than I probably
Yeah,
just
yeah,
did, but
it's-
Any more questions or comments as the Board of Assessors? So is July 15th good?
Yes.
What time?
July 15th is literally the day I get back from.
So it's good.
Perfect.
Actually,
No
hold on,
problem.
it might,
Well, we could do
I
it
might
on a
not be back.
Tuesday. I mean,
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter at all.
You guys know I got a schedule, girl, and I gotta get back to you. I'm sorry.
God, you're so popular.
I'm really not. I'm not.
David, would you be okay with an email
I think it's
response?
Why don't we shoot for July 15th, and you tell me the starting time, and then if that doesn't work in
last
people's
game,
schedules, then we can
14th in Wisconsin.
reshuffle the deck.
Second
Okay.
July ever, like.
Can we just say 6 for now as a
Sure.
tentative?
Yeah, I'm fine with 6.
Okay. And I will.
You're really gonna make me come to a select.
Yes.
All right.
You have to
all
be
right.
there.
You can be here. You got this.
I think I can get there.
Okay, you got it.
All right.
All right.
Having dispatched with item number 17, I need a motion so that we can get back to our business as Board of Selectmen.
I move that we adjourn our meeting as Board of Assessors and reconvene as the Board of Selectmen.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded. Discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we have the treasurer and payroll warrants to approve and sign.
I move that the board approve the treasurer's and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? And if there's nothing else from David and there's nothing else from the board, a final motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Wait.
Wait a minute.
We did at the very beginning.
Do it
again. Okay, well, we have an audience.
Yep, we can.
So,
This is great. We have an audience. We never do. We never do.
Motion to adjourn fails. Let's open up the podium for any non-agenda items or comments from the audience. You need to come down to the podium, identify yourself, where you live. I was really curious why there were so many faces still sitting here in
Too
the
good
audience.
to be true. They were staying to listen to our meeting.
It was so moving.
I-
Rebecca Richards, 35 Wentworth Road, and I just want to refute a couple of comments that Mr. Charles Gregory Boach made earlier. First of all, my husband Bruce and I had some wood harvested on our acre out back of Wentworth Road. Somehow a rumor began that we were subdividing. We have no intention of subdividing. So his comment that there are now 2 subdivisions up there, as far as I know, unless he's gonna subdivide his new acreage, is totally false. Second, and most importantly, there is a loose Wentworth Road Association from Mr. Boach's garage further up Wentworth Road. The town has said they own up to his garage and maintain that. The association pays for any maintenance of the road beyond that. So where he thinks the town is providing that, I do not know. Recently, actually, his son did some work on the part of the town road, smoothing out some of the bumps. So I just wanted to refute his 2 claims. First of all, there's not a second subdivision, and second, the road association maintains that road further up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to get up and speak? You all were very patient, and if in the future, this was perfectly acceptable and wonderful and fine, but you can also just wave your hand and get our attention, say hours ago, but I love that you guys sat through the whole meeting. God bless you. Okay, so if there's no further comments or questions from the audience, can I have a final motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all.
Don't go until you sign it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, you all.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, it was nice having an audience.
Yeah, really nice.
I know it gets
We
so,
usually feel so low.
it gets so lonely in here.
Are you re-upping, David? Are you re-upping?
Yes,
Running
vote.
again?
You haven't read it, the paper? They put my picture in there?